tonight's crucial and perhaps historic motion of no confidence in Jim Callaghan's Labour government.
Her aggressive brand of conservatism frightens many of her colleagues.
Margaret Thatcher is now the Prime Minister of Great Britain with an overall majority.
I know in this place and speaking to this audience, I would have to be addressing not just fellow Republicans, but Democrats and independents as well. Because number one, we can't change the course we're on without you. You are welcome. We need your help and support in a crusade to change the direction of this country. We'll restore hope and we'll welcome them into a great national crusade to make America great again.
Jimmy Carter won 4 years ago as an outsider, and if he wins at all tonight, it must be as an insider defending the status quo. Reagan has cast himself as a sheriff who comes riding into town just in the nick of time shouting, "Enough's enough."
8:15 Eastern Standard Time. On this election night, we have projected Ronald Reagan the winner.
The Reagan Revolution is often used to describe the triumph of conservatism, unabashed, open, unrestricted conservatism.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
One of the great debates of our time is about how much of your money should be spent by the state and how much you should keep to spend on your family.
Both were beacons of the political right, whose economic policies cause division even today.
One problem that we've had even in the best of times, and that is the people who are sleeping on the grates. The homeless who are homeless, you might say, by choice.
By the time she left office, she had transformed Britain from an economically collective and culturally individual society to an inept cultural collective and economically individual one. It was every person for themselves. Survival of the fittest became the order of the day.
Thatcher initially opposed economic sanctions against South Africa's apartheid government. She referred to Nelson Mandela's African National Congress as a, quote, typical terrorist organization. When Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet was arrested for war crimes, including the widespread capture, torture, and murder of political dissidents, she called for his release, and he eventually served house arrest in London.
Reagan administration did, in a new sort of sub-Rosa way, was to secretly support a lot of very violent movements.
Iran-Contra was the first real crack in Reagan's image.
£2 million, the support we give to voluntary organisations who help and advise the homeless.
Corbyn. Will the Prime Minister accept that 10 years ago, in 1979, there were 2,750 households in temporary accommodation in London? The current figure is over 25,000, and a further 2,000 people are sleeping on the streets. And that when her government asked the local authorities what resources they required to deal with the homeless problem in London, they asked for at least £480 million. They were given less than 1/6 of what they wanted. Does she not agree that people sleeping on the streets of our capital city, being charged exorbitant rents, and children being brought up in bed and breakfast hotels is a disgrace to a civilized country?
When the guts of this country were being torn apart, when homelessness was growing, when the healthcare system was disintegrating, when the standard of living of American workers was declining, when more and more of our children were becoming hungry, when our infrastructure was collapsing, when leveraged buyouts were throwing workers out on the street, that's when we saw those lovely 30-second ads about mourning in America. Remember that? The lights were going out all over the country. The people were suffering, and the ads were telling us mourning in America. Things were getting better. Things were getting worse.
I think there's a real feeling that there is a sense that this is Thatcher and Reagan back again.
Bernie called me the day after our election here. I was half asleep watching something on television, and Bernie comes on to say, well done on the campaign. And I was interested in your campaigning ideas. Where did you get them from? And I said, well, you actually. And what I would say to people is, look, don't be discouraged. At the end of the day, human beings want to do things together. They want to do things collectively, and that's the kind of society we are trying to create.
That we are in this together, not words. The truth is, at some level, when you hurt, when your children hurt, I hurt. And when my kids hurt, you hurt. And it's very easy to turn our backs on kids who are hungry or veterans who are sleeping out in the street. And we can develop a psyche, a psychology which says, I don't have to worry about them. All I'm going to worry about myself. I need to make another $5 billion. But I believe that what human nature is about is that everybody in this room impacts everybody else in all kinds of ways that we can't even understand. It's beyond intellect. It's a spiritual, emotional thing. So I believe that when we do the right thing, when we try to treat people with respect and dignity, when we say that that child who is hungry is my child, I think we are more human when we do that than when we say, hey, this whole world is me. I need more and more. I don't care about anybody else.
Listen, my views on nuclear weapons are well known. I want to achieve a nuclear-free world through multilateral disarmament, through the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
We will do everything that we can to move toward a non-nuclear proliferation treaty. Look, when you have...
Would you allow the Russians and the Chinese to outspend us in that area?
Well, I allow them to outspend us. I wouldn't phrase it that way. I think you got to sit down with these people. Russia has enormous economic problems. China has enormous economic problems. Guess what? We have enormous economic problems. A lot better way to spend money on healthcare, education, infrastructure than on nuclear weapons.
Just want to make sure, though, if they're spending trillions to develop that generation of weapons, would you follow suit?
The goal is to move to get rid of nuclear weapons, not to get into an arms race. We have other more important things to spend our money on.
Because security is not only about direct military defense. It's about conflict resolution and preventions, underpinned by strong diplomacy.
We have got to help lead the struggle to defend and expand a rules-based international order in which law, not might, makes right. To quote the prophet Isaiah, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore."
We didn't win the election. I wished we had. But in that campaign, we changed the debate.
Well, when you take on people who have an enormous amount of power, you do not win on your first shot.
Well, we've got news for them. Change is coming.
When millions of people stand up and fight, they win.